VPs in Kubs. So yeah, just welcome to our event and thank you so much for coming. And we also want to thank our collaborators, Stace and Wax, who really helped make this happen. So, we're really excited to put on this event for you, and we really hope that you can take away as much as possible from our wonderful panelists. And this event is really all about opening up new doors within this industry and exploring different opportunities within the gaming world. And we really want to dispel the belief that only programmers or developers or professional gamers can make their mark in this industry. Though these are some of the opportunities that we will be talking about. So before I go ahead and introduce our speakers for tonight, I'll give a brief background on the gaming industry. I'm sure we're all to some extent familiar with games from a consumer perspective, but sometimes it's really hard to gauge just how much of an impact the gaming industry has had on the overall entertainment industry and the broader business world. So gaming has turned into one of the largest and fastest growing branches of entertainment in the world. In the US alone, it generates about $22 billion in revenue per year with an annual growth rate of 5%. And what's particularly exciting, especially since 3 clubs that are collaborating for today all have some sort of Asian interest, that Asian markets have been taking the forefront in this industry. So as you can see, Asia has about $43.1 billion in revenue with a 15% growth rate. And then globally, the gaming industry has a huge impact, generating $92.5 billion with 9% growth. And not to mention how some of the most widely recognized brands and names come from gaming companies, such as Nintendo, Sony PlayStation, and so on. And these companies have not only been able to build recognition and awareness within the consumer market, but also on a broader perspective. So for example, some rank very highly on lists like Great Places to Work or Fortune's 100 Best Companies. So how can you get involved? So we'll first start off with Paul Chung, who is a senior at Penn, and he interned at Riot Games in Santa Monica this past summer on the e-commerce team, and he'll be returning there full-time this fall. For those of you who might not know, Riot is the creator of League of Legends, which is arguably one of the most popular games of our generation. But apart from its hit game, it also is Riot has been really acclaimed for its passionate work culture, ranking number 13 on Fortune's 100 Best Companies to Work for. So Paul is going to share a bit about his experiences regarding Riot's internship program in particular.
So I don't really have too much to say about the gaming industry in general because my experience doesn't really go beyond the 3 months that I was there. But I can kind of talk on the internship program at Riot in specific and kind of how I ended up there. And so, again, my name is Paul Chung. I'm a senior studying PPE, and I actually had no idea I was going to apply last year. Kind of like the opportunity kind of arose because I saw a post on our League of Legends Facebook page, actually by the e-commerce manager that I was going to work with, that they were looking for someone. And so I guess my background before that, I had kind of grown up playing video games. I guess I would do it in my free time, de-stress. I think at one point I convinced my mom even that playing Age of Empires is good for AP0 or something. And so I guess that, along with the fact that it kind of lined up with my previous experience as a freshman, and it's kind of strange because as a freshman you kind of really take whatever's given to you, and that happened to be an e-commerce position at an insurance company, and that really has nothing to do with video games at all. But that kind of matched up with my passion in video games, and I said why not give it a shot? Because I'd always kind of joked with my friends about applying to Riot, but that never really happened. So yeah, my junior year I applied, and then I had gotten the interview, and then there were more full interviews, and then an on-site. And there was no really kind of formal process through Penn or PenLink or anything like that, but I kind of just applied, and thankfully half of the e-commerce team is actually from Penn, so I think that kind of helped me out a bit. But yeah, it was definitely kind of easier to talk to them, kind of knowing that we had the same background and things like that. And so yeah, I was really grateful for the opportunity, and then I ended up accepting really quickly. And I guess one suggestion I have regarding that is that I think a lot of people wait until the end of the deadline for the internship program to apply, but I really encourage you to apply as soon as the applications kind of like open up, because they definitely give a lot more weight to the ones that apply earlier. And that's kind of what I did. And so I guess the internship program itself, how it worked kind of like work-wise, it was very project-based. So I did like 3 major projects that my manager had kind of like outlined for me beforehand, and then we did kind of like smaller things as I kind of completed up the big ones, and those kind of included a lot of analytics, so your kind of standard Excel, Tableau, SQL, analyzing in specific how kind of our retail cards did, and to kind of form a pitch and implement like a seasonal retail card strategy, things like that. I also, from start to finish, pitched and implemented a promotion that made around like $700,000. So that was pretty cool, like, 'cause I only did that within like a month or so, and that was kind of a new experience for me, especially because like previous internships are kind of really just like show up and do some, I guess, like clerk type work. And so they give you a lot of like meaningful work to do, and they kind of help you along even if you don't really have those skills, because I didn't really start out with those skills at all. So it's definitely a company where you can kind of, I guess, if you're self-motivated, thrive. They definitely give you the resources, and it's really kind of fulfilling to see it kind of come to fruition. Some of the smaller ones I did were kind of like planning out our sales schedule and things like that. Yeah, but that's like not too much that I did, I feel like, in the summer. As for the internship program itself, the perks are pretty awesome. Like they hook you up with living accommodations for the whole summer. It's in Santa Monica, so it's right next to the beach. You know, go down to like their tree promenade every weekend or so, and just kind of like shop or do whatever. Also, they plan activities for you, like as an intern class, and they really kind of make you a cohesive unit. So I became really close to my class, and I still keep contact with them. And I'm actually like rooming with them when I go back in. So that's really awesome. And yeah, that's pretty much my experience.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Paul. So we'll have question and answer session at the end of all of our speakers. So if you have any particular questions in mind, just hold on for a bit. So next up, we're going to welcome Jasmine Greene, who is the president and lead designer at Luminosity Mobile in New York. Luminosity was founded in 2015 with team members from the former game development company Salty Pepper Games. And their first mobile game is Once Upon a Runner, but Luminosity really aspires to enhance the experience of the mobile world beyond just mobile games. Jasmine has always been fascinated with games and has only recently delved into game design. And as a writer by nature, she's very excited about all the opportunities that mobile apps offer in terms of interactive storytelling. So now she's going to share a bit about the insights on the startup story and culture of Luminosity, as well as other ways people can get involved in this industry other than just programming.
So, again, I'm Jasmine Greene. I'm from Luminosity Mobile. As she stated, I started Luminosity Mobile back in 2015 with a other employee from Salty Pepper Games, Ray Flores. He was also the composer at Salty Pepper Games. I actually initially got into video games. Well, I was, again, always a gamer, but I actually started working in the game industry as a writer. So I came into a different project, Abidos Online, that was an MMO, and I did a lot of world building and writing. I did some graphic novels for them as well. And then I actually came on to Salty Pepper as a writer, so I helped create the background stories for the world that they were creating. And from there, as a small startup for Salty Pepper, you know, there was a lot of issues in terms of, we were, even still at Luminosity, we're all remote workers. So having to manage a team of remote workers, and then obviously in terms of budget, being as a small independent company, it was a little difficult. So we kind of wanted to work on something that was a little smaller in scope than an action RPG genre. So we actually started with a mobile game, which was Once Upon a Runner. And from there, I actually pitched the idea to the president of Salty Pepper, said, you know, why don't we have a mobile game? It'll be a lot faster. It'll put our name out on the board, and we can kind of hype up our future games with this. So he put me on as lead designer at that, and you know, after a while, I'm not going to get into the details, but we split. I formed Luminosity Mobile from there, and then we actually used the original IP, Once Upon a Runner. We actually purchased that for Luminosity Mobile and released that on Android and iOS. And we are currently working on our second title, The Painter's Apprentice, which will be for iOS, Android, and PC. So, you know, obviously as a startup, there's a lot of issues that you deal with. Obviously budget is probably the biggest one, but then as a international team, we have programmers in Romania, Croatia, we got people in Texas and Florida. So obviously making sure that we all stay in touch, we all know that we're on the same page has always been an issue with the time zones, so making sure that we talk to each other, we talk to each other through Facebook chat. We also have weekly Skype meetings just to keep in touch with our progress. We have a very open environment in terms of communication. I always tell anybody who works with me, if you have any questions, if you have any concerns, if you have any ideas, please come to me, let me know. I'm obviously not a mind reader, so just come to me whenever there are issues. We can work something out. And that's really the main thing that I really push in terms of Luminosity, is just kind of having this openness in terms of communication. And, you know, a lot of times that can be an issue if you are working remotely, obviously. And then as you're working remotely, there's also issues with team management. We solve this by using things like Slack, Trello. So easy to use boards that, you know, you can see what the progress is, you can comment on them, and just making sure that the tasks are being done on time. And you know, for us as indie developers, you know, I started off as a writer, that's my passion, but I also love game design. Other people in our company, we have programmers, obviously, we have a sound designer who's also the vice president. So, you know, you kind of forget certain things, and I think this is a problem that a lot of indie game does, is that you forget different aspects of the business. So a lot of the issues with indie developers, they focus a lot on the game, polishing the game, doing, you know, testing and things like that, but a lot of people forget about the business side and the marketing side. So I think in terms of that, I think that's like a huge opportunity in terms of jobs, like, you know, getting marketing help, getting social media help, communication, PR, learning to analyze the business, as you were saying, like getting the analytics, learning about the metrics, what are the key performance indicators that you can do, how can you, you know, figure that out and have your game released better. But I think there are a lot of other opportunities beyond just marketing, just beyond analytics. If you have a very entrepreneurial spirit, I think you can definitely start your own business. It doesn't necessarily have to be game development. Things like, you know, legal fees, writing up contracts, things like that. You know, a lot of game developers forget about that. You know, if you're working with a team, you need to know how are you going to split the income if you get any, making sure that you have NDAs in place just so that they don't give any other information out. So, you know, getting legal counsel for that. Licenses for music, if you want to use music that is licensed by bands, you need to fill out paperwork for that. You need to get in contact with the people and learn what that's all about. So I've met somebody before who that's all she did was kind of be this middleman in between the indie game developers and the music company. And she negotiated, you know, here's the forms you need to do, here's the money that you need to pay. So I think there's just a lot of opportunities in terms of being creative in what you can do inside of the game development company. You don't necessarily have to work with a game company. So another great example is localization. So as she was saying, Asia is a huge market, and if you're working within the United States, what works in the United States doesn't necessarily work in China or Korea or Japan. So you need to kind of make sure that when you do localize, it's obviously not just about translating, it's about making sure that your in-app purchases are aligned with how they make, you know, how they make purchases over in those countries. It's about channeling your, you know, not channeling, but changing your level design or changing some aspects of your gameplay to ensure that it works well with that audience. So I think just, thinking about what are your strengths, how can we apply this to game development, I think can really open up a lot of different doors.
Thank you. So our last speaker is actually going to be Skyping in from Korea. So could you start up?
Oh, yeah.
So our final speaker is a recent panelist. His name is Seok Chung, and he has really extensive experience in the corporate gaming world, having been a consumer analyst at Blizzard Entertainment, as well as a consumer and market analyst at Riot Games. So Blizzard Entertainment, if you guys don't know, produced some of the #1 games like World of Warcraft, Hearthstone, Diablo, and StarCraft, and they're really a catalyst in the gaming industry because they're the ones who really stirred up all the excitement around professional gaming and game broadcasting. And then what's even more impressive is Seok has now moved on to a more personal startup venture in Korea. So it's called 433 Creative Lab, and he's working as one of the product managers on their global business team. So some of the games that they produce, they're most famous for their Kakao games, so like Blade, Hero, and Arrow on like Korean social media. And yeah, so he's going to be talking to us about his personal experiences working in the gaming industry, like in the United States versus abroad in Korea. And I think he has a PowerPoint prepared for us, so.
Yeah, he'll share his PowerPoint that he prepared. He's been quite nervous for the past 2 days, asking what I have to say like 5 times. He's actually pretty good at playing these games that he works for. So if you have any questions to ask about how well he plays, because as a player you want to play well, right? You don't want to like play for 30 minutes and lose and like leave in bed when you're sleeping. So I think that's the camera. I have no idea where he went. I was just messaging him up there.
So while we're waiting, does anyone have any like immediate questions that they want to ask either Paul or Jasmine?
I have a question.
Yeah.
So you know how the gaming industry is like occupied by powerhouses like Riot Games and Blizzard Entertainment. So as a startup, is it easy or is it obviously I'm assuming it will be really hard for like a small startup to compete with these large powerhouses. How are you like managing to?
So it's, with that, the whole thing is you don't really try to compete with them, right? They already have their own niche and their own group of people that they have, so you're trying to find a different niche that you can fill with your games. In terms of mobile gaming, you still have these powerhouses like Supercell, those kinds of people with Clash of Clans and whatever else. So, basically the whole point is if you want visibility, you kind of need to build a community around your game, around your company really. So you kind of have to go out to events, things like PAX East, things like Boston Fig, things like, Indiecade or anything like that, and kind of get your name out there, meet people, make sure that you kind of make an impact with them.
Alrighty, so it seems like he's really excited, sending me all caps messages. Hello.
Hello.
Hi, we have about 50-ish people in the room, Huntsman room, that you missed so much. Okay, so hi, this is Won. So we've already completed your introduction, and you can go ahead and do whatever you need to do.
Okay, I'll just try to share my screen with you guys. I know PowerPoint. Let's see. You guys see my screens? Right, it's really early in the morning right now, so it's like, I don't really wake up this early to go to work. Hello everyone. My name is Seok. I was in the class of 15 and I'm a product manager and a data analyst at Wharton School Creative Lab. Honestly, it really does feel awkward talking about gaming, especially to a working audience. Many have asked me to speak about Korean mobile gaming industry in general, so here I am. And let's begin with how mobile production and publishing are structured in Korea in general. So I'm sure like many of you have been exposed to some sort of mobile games in your lives, whether they be like Game Town Cookie Run, like Temple Run, Candy Crush Soda, like Clash of Clans, but exactly how do we get exposed to games? Just like how books end up on the shelves at Barnes and Noble, mobile games along with all these other apps also become accessible to consumers in App Store and Google Play. So we work with developers like book publishers do with authors, and we publish our games on app platforms like App Store and Google Play, so we can reach our gamers. So who are we? We're number 2 mobile games publishers in Korea, next to Marvel. And we have about 40+ games in our portfolio, and we make about $100 million in USD. And we first received joint investment from Tencent and Riot, about $100 million. And then from there on, we've been spending that money to reinvest and then published many mobile games, I guess, for all these other students and other in Korea, under subway to work from work. Who the heck are we? So we're kind of like a combination of venture capital and the publisher. So as a VC, we look for like startup devs to kind of join early stage investment. Even like before the angel investment, and then we source those games with potential, and then as a publisher we add value to those games, so we publish them. Roles and responsibilities. Okay. I try to simplify the R&Rs of the devs and publishers and users. I guess they're also important. And starting with the devs, they outline what they're going to produce, just like any other manufacturers and software developers do. They code, design, most times wine and QQ, and moving more. So, yeah, and if devs are just starting off and requires cash, they look to pitch their ideas to publishers and VC. So there are publishers like 33 Creative Lab and Seok from early stage investment. It typically without any side investors and makes a publishing deal. So here the publishing deal usually includes like agreements on revenue shares, marketing guarantees, intellectual property usage rights, and so on. So yeah, so why do developers need publishers? I've asked this to myself a lot of times. It really is simple. It's about comparative advantage. And publishers focus only on publishing. And if starting that company is much cheaper and efficient to outsource to a publisher with constructive monetization, quality assurances, and so on. And if you've ever played Candy Crush Saga, Soda, whatever, you'll probably want to have made an in-app purchase to buy more moves, or like if you're playing action RPG games on mobile, then you probably want to have bought some really strong weapons to kind of grind your way to the stages and stuff. I mean, if there's a great game, if it's not profitable, if it's not making any money, like devs and publishers cannot sustain themselves. We optimize our business model, like we go up, I guess, and make the most money out of it. So, and well, client, like publish, if we look at publishers' responsibilities, like client optimization, it's about managing the performance of an app on the mobile device, and usually includes working on the optimal initial download app size from the market, and the size of the extra downloads, which are again like you probably had this before, like when you download an app from an app store, and then you start the app, and then just ask for more download. So that kind of stuff, we manage the ratio of the initial download and the download, and make more attractive to users, I guess. And for that, we cannot really afford to invest in database infrastructures. Publishers also like provide this platform and server-side tech supports. And then before the market lets you release the app to consumers, they initially review every app for its functionality, like appropriateness, etc. Like Apple is a real pain in the ass since it like constantly emphasizes the user experience using the app. So whatever we want to publish on the App Store, like they review it. Like it takes like weeks, like 2 weeks for them to review, and then give us the feedback. It may not be of their standards, and they just reject it, and then we have to resubmit, and then we have to wait 2 more weeks to get the results. And so it can really mess up with our schedule. And yeah, and then also like a game with a lot of bugs and critical issues, and it's not gonna make as much money because users are starting complaining, and there are free changes for the users. So in that sense, like quality assurance really comes in at a crucial stage of publishing. Yeah, I really hated QA because it just takes like one time like I had to help out a QA team, and then like I had to come in during the weekends and like play the same thing over and over again for like 24/7, like to see if there's any bugs for the devs to fix. And then eventually it also comes down to little things like minor translations and like just because I'm an English speaker in Korea, they kind of use me sometimes without paying me much. Yeah, and like marketing. So we recently launched a AAA title from Lost Kingdom, and an opportunity to work with Orlando Bloom. And like we keep having a scandal with the Russian and Canadian players with them. So that was a great marketing right there. And our marketers search for the most efficient ad marketing channels and constantly help the expected and opportunities and they also work closely with Google and Apple the features and their employers at the top, like the flashing banners and stuff. When you first go into the App Store, saying that these apps are featured. And we also work with like K-pop idols and like this stuff for promoting Jung. Yeah, when everything is technically set for launch, we do a performance check with closed beta tests and open beta tests so that we can get people users to play our games for a short period of time, like a week or so. And during the game, our like analytics team analyzes approach and figures out like where the users are having most trouble playing the game. And when we're initially designing the game and the database servers, we find thousands of flags that are triggered when we use perform any kind of action in the game, like purchasing an in-app product, if they're completing the tutorials, if they like the success rate in like beating the boss. And with the CDP data, we work on like final polishing that fixes the problems that will come during CDP.
Hey, one song.
Yeah?
I think some parts keep cutting off. We are having a hard time like listening to some of the things you're speaking. Do you?
Okay, you haven't missed anything important yet. Yeah.
How should we improve this? Do you have like a mic or so we our mic?
I? Yeah, I have a mic. I'm using it right now. Oh my god, like it's like a built-in microphone on my laptop.
Oh, okay.
So you missed what?
Do you have like a iPhone like earphones? They come with iPhones.
Yeah, I'm using it right now.
Oh, you're using it right now. Okay.
Yeah, but my laptop is not a MacBook, so the microphone doesn't really, the earphone microphone doesn't really work on time.
Okay. Okay, it's fine.
Alright, so do you guys want me to go over anything?
I think it's okay because I think everyone wants to listen to the important part right now.
Oh, I mean, like, there is no important part.
Yeah. Do you
Like,
wanna,
everything's not important.
okay. Do you wanna
Alright.
go ahead? Yeah. Sorry.
Alright, so like if you've missed much, like just send the slides. I have already sent the slides. Right? Okay. So yeah, where were we? Real-time user analysis, I guess. So after the CBT, then we analyze and we fix here and there with the CBT data. Then we go through another QA that submits games for reviews on the App Store and Google Play. When the review's done, like we release the game and start marketing. So like after the game's released, we kind of monitor the users' behaviors in the game, develop insights into what kind of events or sales would most effective. When the new updates should be done, which part of the funnel users are having trouble going through, like why people are leaving the game for good, etc. And works with the devs who constantly bring change to the games. Like so, based on these data, we also manage our online communities where users share their thoughts and strategies. So in my analytics team, we analyze about 20 kilobytes of data every day to let the product managers know what they're doing right and what they're doing wrong in terms of servicing the game. So we built really, like a strong database, I'd say. Yeah, so that's about it for the roles and responsibilities. And for the users, they either play, pay, or kind of complain. And we all have to see to their complaints and, it's really effective for publishers to convince the developers with the users' complaints. Like, oh, this guy is complaining that this is wrong. Is it planned in advance, or devs usually say no, and then they say they don't want to fix it, and we have to kind of constantly try to convince them that it's important, it's really important. It's like we do a lot of ping pong with developers. Yeah, so that's about it. And we're currently working with like Warner Brothers to find ways to use their intellectual properties like DC Comics and Lord of the Rings to feel like more globally. Thanks to the special game culture that Korea really has, I find that a lot of the Korean foreign developers are super interested in the Korean market right now, and it feels as if the whole world is watching a lot of pressure. And yeah, this is the end of my presentation, and thanks for listening. And I'm surprised to see so many people interested in the industry, or like kind of this weird thing, like get a position in banking or consulting or die trying. If there are any questions, I'll be more than happy to answer.
Okay, all right, thank you for your presentation. Okay, so we're gonna open up the floor again to questions. They can be like specifically to OneTalk over Skype or to any of our other panelists.
Hi, OneTalk.
Hi.
So what's the significance of 433?
Sorry, I didn't get it.
What's the significance of 433?
So, the significance of 433, we started for really early stage investments. So when the devs are set up, like we get the acquisition deals through like buying their equity or swapping equity. And then we during publisher deal, we offer like revenue shares and we marketing guarantees and like those things that other publishers don't do to developers sometimes in Korea. And what makes 433 really special is that there's nothing really special.
I meant the name of 433.
He means the name.
Oh. Okay, there are like a lot of rumors going around, they told me that they'll let me know the meaning of the name, like 433, when I join the company, and then they never really said. And what I personally think that is it's time that you get off work, 4:33 a.m.
Did he say AM?
Sometimes.
This is for Jasmine. So you said you were a writer. Is this like more the plot? Like, did you have coding skills before? And I guess how high up do you think you can get without coding? If you, I guess, like are savvy and you know how the industry works, but you don't actually know.
Yep. So, yeah, I just started off as a writer, basically doing background, world building, kind of making the characters, and I didn't really have any coding experience. I did learn Unity, so I do have a little bit. Most of what I do is designing the game, so a lot of it is game design documents, figuring out what all of the mechanics and aspects of the game are, building the world, kind of putting everything together, and then building out the levels. So luckily, the way things are now, there's so many different engines that you can use that you don't really necessarily need to know coding per se. I mean, Unity does use C#, Java, and their own like proprietary code, like Boo. But you can use some other ones like Game Maker. You can kind of drag and drop for those. You can use, you can learn Game Maker script, but you don't necessarily need to know any more like C++ or things like that. So you can get pretty far, I think, with basic knowledge, and then if you want to continue with coding and do more of the programming side, probably learn something like C# would be a good idea.
Sure. I guess it's an open question for everybody. So, the tech industry is known to be one of the fastest industries for a change. And with new technology such as, the VR, Samsung's Oculus and whatnot, what do you expect to be the next trend of the gaming industry, and how are your companies, adjusting for this type of trend?
Well, obviously, VR is kind of the next big thing that a lot of people are going to. I think everybody's doing a lot with VR. I think the other cool thing that's kind of in the back burner that people aren't paying too much attention to because it's not quite out yet is AR, which I'm personally super excited about. I think AR, for me, is more of what I've been looking forward to just because I was like a huge tech fan and all like, ooh, holodeck, that would be awesome. So I think, something like that would be super cool. Personally, I would love to do VR, just in terms of the budget though. I don't really have the PC to build it on yet. But I think something, in terms of what's going to happen, what can be the next movement, I think VR with a combination of AR will definitely be on the forefront probably in like 5-10 years.
So would you say your company's actually going through the processes of creating such a system?
Well, we would love to, but just as a small indie startup, I don't think right now it's in our budget. But once it does become, I think, more accessible in terms of PC specs, stuff like that. I mean, the dev kit is pretty cheap for like the Oculus Rift. It's like $399 or something like that. Which you have to have a pretty fast video card and all of that other good stuff. But it's definitely something we're looking into, and now that other companies like Samsung is releasing have their own VR kit, HTC is having their own, Sony obviously is building their own as well, so.
Any other questions?
Yeah, so I think it also applies to all of you. I want to hear from all of you. So basically, a lot of the students studying business or econ are willing to sacrifice a lot of their life for work. So their work-life balance is kind of ruined for a lot of the jobs they're applying for here. So they work like 9 a.m. to like 4:33 a.m. So I just want to hear from your experiences what your work-life balance was like.
I guess first, I think it really depends on like the size of the company first of all. Like I think that if you're coming like a startup, you have to do a lot more. So I think a lot more will be required of you, like kind of as it pops up. But in terms of like Riot, it's like a mid-sized company, and so I really enjoyed the work-life balance. I got into work around like 10 a.m. I usually got up by like 6 or 7, and like I had a lot of time like to kind of just like hang out on campus because we have like a basketball court, a PC lawn, and like all that stuff too. So like they try to keep up like the startup benefits, and they definitely kind of have that mid-sized like room to really let you be free for a bit. I can't speak for startups. So.
Yeah, so for us, I mean, all of us have our full-time jobs. So we all work 9 to 5 with our jobs, and then we work from like 5 to 12 on the business after work. So it really depends. Again, like if you're working, other startups. I mean, most indie game devs, to be honest, all have generally either somebody supporting them, or they have a full-time job until they make it, right? So once you do make it, there's a lot to do as a startup. With a company of, let's say, like 3 to 5 people, there's a lot of responsibility that you need to take over. So, if you're good at programming and you are also good at public speaking, or you like to go to events, you're going to end up doing a lot of the community management, social media. There's also, you have to go out and do some like QA testing. You have to go out and, meet with gamers. You got to oversee task management, project management, all of that stuff. So it can take a lot of time if you allow it to.
So for Korea, I think I'm currently like working with like 4 developers right now, and I think it's a Korean thing where like all the developers kind of group 24/7, and then for us it's kind of really tough because they ask for a meeting at like 2 a.m. in the morning, and they say they're gonna send their feedbacks on our proposal like 3 a.m. and then they ask us to review it before the meeting in the morning. That kind of stuff kind of really we're like a mid-sized company too. And then since we don't have enough like human resources, like we have to kind of like take care of all those kind of stuff, so it's kind of tough. So for me, yeah, I think like before I worked on launching Wave globally. Before we launched it, I worked like 9:30 a.m. to like 4:30 a.m. like every day, and it was kind of fun. And there was no life balance. But right now, like after all the launches, and I'm working on like preparing the games for CDP and OB, those kind of things. Like now it takes less work, so I guess we get off work at like 6:30 every day, and then we schedule.
I'm sorry for asking industry-related questions, but you know, the big thing recently was the competition between AlphaGo and Settle with the Chinese game Go, and I guess there's been an increased interest in the sector of deep learning, machine learning. And would you say that this has sort of affected the gaming industry, and in some sense it affected your company? And if so, like how has that affected your company?
I have not heard, sorry, I haven't really kept up too much with that, so I wouldn't be able to answer, unfortunately.
So apart from the make the employees, you know, watch the Go game during the work hours, it didn't really kind of affect our company. Because AlphaGo really, what it does is like really, you know, it's designed a really nice algorithm in computing. Yeah, it's all about like Tomo and Fu, and if this guy plays here, and then the AlphaGo calculates stuff. It has like all these. Yeah, like algorithms, like if the other players place their stone over here, and then they calculate the most highest probability to win, and then they place their next move, and then after the other guy does their next move, and then recalculates the most probable outcome, so winning, and then it kind of branches everything out. And then we realized what we kind of learned from that is not that like AI can take over the world, but Google's ability to, you know, like make the machine calculate really efficiently with only 120 CPUs. But no, I don't think that's made any impact. Yeah.
Are there any last questions before we finish up?
I have one question for Paul. So you said you were an e-commerce intern for an insurance company as well as Riot Games. Would you say there was something special about your internship experience because it was Riot Games opposed to your internship at the insurance company?
So could you repeat that? I'm sorry.
So you were an e-commerce intern at both the Riot Games and the insurance company, and because of the game industry itself, was there something special about your internship experience as an e-commerce intern opposed to the insurance company?
Yeah, I think for one, it was a lot more interesting to me personally because I wasn't really kind of interested in dental insurance and like life insurance, and that was the type of process we're trying to streamline, like the purchasing process for. I think knowing your like audience is always a good thing, and like what they would be most responsive to is always like a good thing to be doing. And so I guess we try to cater most to people in the age range between like, say like 13 or like 24-ish, and I guess we try to make it easy but like also interesting. There's always like ways that we're thinking about to make the purchasing process, I guess, more satisfying and I guess flashy in ways that I guess kind of grab your attention without being like gaudy.
My question is to Jasmine. In our kind of brief conversation, you mentioned about like a lot of opportunities for people to kind of like go up to these fairs where a lot of startup gaming companies are there. Could you kind of like share for people who are interested in kind of getting more exposed?
Yeah,
to
sure.
the conferences?
Well, I'm not that familiar with Philadelphia area. I know that, you know, in New York City there's a lot. So there's a local event that's called Playcrafting. They have a lot of, they have these expos that happen every, like 4 times a year. And then you can go and meet a lot of the indie game developers. You can chat with them, play their games, try it out. And obviously, you know, depending on how far out you want to go, there's Indiecade, which is actually happening next month, which is in a museum. It's also like indie game developers. There's there's PAX East, which is more of like a mainstream kind of gaming convention where you can see, you'll see indie developers with large like EA. You'll see, I think when was it, like several years ago, Blizzard was there. There were like other companies. Bethesda Software was there. So you get to kind of see like a sneak peek at what they're going to be releasing in the upcoming years. It's kind of cool. So, and then also within Philadelphia, I'm sure there's like a local IGDA chapter, which is like International Games Developer Association. So they usually will have events, I'm sure. I I'm not sure when or how often they would have it. You'd have to check out your local chapter. But if it's something that you're interested in, definitely look up like IGDA Philadelphia, and they'll probably have a list of events. They also, on their forums, they also list like job listings. So if you're interested in like a job, you can go there and find something.
Alright, so I guess this wraps up our gaming event. Thank you so much for to our panelists, first of all. So let's give them a last round. Thank you for all of you for coming. I hope you learned at least something from being here. And I hope you'll continue to support our speakers in their future endeavors, as well as Kubs, SACE, and WAX in our future events as well. Feel free to take any of the remaining food, and have a great evening.